Wow, did you hear that noise? I hear it going forward also, not just in reverse. So now that you heard the symptom, which was that sound, right, that we're talking about, if you have something like that, or maybe you might in the future, I'm going to show you what to look for. And even though you just had a brake job done, what could have gone wrong to cause that noise? So let's get into it. So even before you take the tire off, I already see something through this little rim hole right here. That backing sheathing on that plate has fallen down and it's riding against the hardware plate right here. And that's metal on metal. That could be causing a squeak and damage. And plus, whoever did this brake job, they put caliper grease on the outside of the tins on the top where the pads ride. And that's a no-no. And I'll show you a close-up why it is. I want to take the piston part off right here so we can actually see the shims and what's happening to them on the brand new pads. And we can actually see the hardware right here and see how much and why someone put coating on it. So 14 millimeter wrench on this particular car, just in case if you want to know. This is the slider bolt, and that's the slider part right there. That goes in that caliper bracket. And we're going to take this bolt out. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. So let's just set that aside. So let's take this off. I'm just going to take this right out of there. See how that slid by? It slid right down. You can see where it used to. It started here and it slid down. And what the shim does, it stops vibration and sound from traveling from this piece of steel where the pad itself is bonded and riding through like a megaphone right through that steel caliper bracket into the car. It helps quiet that down. So what I would do, if I was to do this brake job, I would have, should have came like that, right? But you see how easy I pulled that off? I would take a little hammer and just bend these tabs and let it really hold itself on there. Now here's the surface that I'm talking about. I speak about this all the time. This caliper hardware, this should not have anything on the top because what do we got here? A lot of sand and brake dust. It's going to build up on that, and that's going to stop this pad from going back and forth. The tin is stainless steel, should never get rust on it. This brake pad, yeah, it's metal, but it's also painted. So it should be coated, and you want it to glide on the stainless steel. Nothing to interrupt that. So now I can take this bracket off, and now we can get a real close-up picture of what's going on here. I want to look to see if the tins themselves got bent in any way, if they were hitting the rotor surface. So when we take this rotor off, we're going to look on the inside of that too. Look at all the dirt, like the sand and the dirt. That's just going to compromise the performance of those brake pads sliding on those shims. We're going to end up cleaning that up, putting it back together. But now we're going to focus on the rotor, because you could hear that growl every once in a while. It was like a off. It wasn't a constant. It was like every 3/4 of a turn you hear this whoosh, whoosh. But there's something hitting somewhere. And a quick note here, if you replace your rotors, there should be a rubber boot right here, and that covers the hole for the adjustment for the parking brake shoes. And another good thing to note is that with this rotor flush, I can really turn that. These parking brake shoes never got adjusted. So you put the brake all the way down for the parking brake, and it's not probably grabbing at all. Those should be adjusted, and we'll go into that. Now I see how that rotor hit, and I'm going to spin it to see if I hear any noise. I don't hear any noise, but what I do see, if you look at the gap, and then it goes tight again right in here. But there's it almost looks like this backing plate is pushed back that way. Every step before you just tear something apart, don't just like rip it all apart and then look for the problem. Take it apart in stages and start looking at how it would sit if the wheel was on. And I can see, look how close that is, and it kind of bows out. So I'm going to pay attention to the backing plate. I don't feel that those shims was making that noise because it wasn't a tinny sound, it was a growl, but it was every 3/4 on the turnaround. So we have something solid hitting on a rotation. Now we're going to take this rotor right off. All right, so the first thing I see when I take this apart, these are the parking brake shoes, e-brake shoes, whatever you want to call them. But you see the backing plate here? So you see how they have the high-rise spots on them? The shoe itself is riding on that backing plate. Kind of keeps it straight out from resting against the backing plate. Those are always supposed to be cleaned up and put like a thick dielectric grease or even the caliper grease can go there. Because then every time you expand the e-brake shoes, they ride out on the metal and then they come back. Now, if they don't have a smooth surface because it builds up a rust, that shoe's going to hang up and ride on the inside of that hat of that rotor. So we've got new hardware here that was done correctly. That's great. Brand new parking brake shoes. I can see they're not even riding on the top because they weren't adjusted. So we're going to take care of that. And it's got even new hardware, new adjuster on it. Well, now I'm going to take this parking brake or e-brake shoes off so we can kind of check this whole plate out, and we're going to try to manipulate it and see if we can fix it. So I'm just going to take the hardware off and get these shoes out of the way. So I'm going to do a quick experiment. I'm going to take that ruler, I got a piece of paper behind it, and I'm going to try to, 2 different inks here. See if I can get that mark. I'm rubbing right against that. There we go, red ink. So now I'm going to flip it over. I'll go green. Let's go green. I'm going to bring it up the top half of this hub, and let's see if I can pick up where that is actually riding. Well, there it is right there. And I actually have a measurement if I want, right? The green is where it's on the top, and the red is where it sits on the bottom, right where that backing plate rubs. All right, so what I did was I took the rotor, spun it around, and I put it on the hub. So now this is the inside. This is what it's going to look like where the e-brake shoes ride right in here. We call this the hat, and that's where they stop. They act like old brake shoes instead of pads. They hold the hub from spinning, and that's when your parking brake's on. You release it, they go in. I want to see where that piece is hitting. So this is where the hub rides, which is same as it is right now, but opposite. So the backing plate actually rides out here. And I see this beautiful white little metal line that's going around, cutting into that quite nicely. It's really light right here, but boy, does it get really prominent going all the way around here. Really a lot right there. So that tells me that was severe noise when that first started riding on this car. I don't feel like this road is damaged. We're just going to stop that backing plate from doing that again. So we're going to try to bend. Now you have to think of physics. Which way would you bend that? Would you bend it out or away? If you bend it away, is it going to cause it to bend in another place? It's going to hit the actual surface where the pad rides. If you bend it in, will it keep the water away and do its job? Now I'm just going to take some brake clean. I'm going to clean the inside of this hub. All right, now we've cleaned all that brake dust out, any other material that possibly be in there. And we also can see now, if you look at a good view around the inside of this hub, you can see where the parking brake shoes have been riding. So this is what we call the hat, and that's where the parking brake shoe or e-brake shoe rides on the inside here. Now you can see a marking clearly. That's the width of the shoe, and that's where it rides. Now watch when I turn this rotor. It disappears right there. It's hardly even hitting. So that tells me that either we have a warped rotor or a warped backing plate or hub style, because the hub is part of it, or the shoes haven't been adjusted properly. So out of those 3, what I'm going to go with is I'm going to adjust these shoes. I'm going to put it back together, and I'm going to see if it works. All right, so here we have the parking brake shoes. I took them off already. This is how they sit, just like this on the inside. So now I'm going to flip them, and we're going to look at the marking points where they are riding. So if I go like this, what do I see? I see shiny, shiny, somewhat a little not shiny. I see rust and rust. Why did it rust? And look at the matches with the rust on that side. So that is hitting this metal, collecting that rust on it. And that's fairly shiny, and is like a little scratch on that. So we're going to manipulate this plate. Something tells me, my eyes tell me that that looks like it's bowed that way and I want to bring it in. But if I bring it in, that's going to be hitting too much. But at the same time, that could be causing those shoes, right, not to be hitting properly, being out of adjustment, and they're going to be kind of cocked that way. So we have to bring it back so that they're parallel. So this is where you take the caliper grease, and you're going to put it right on the high spot, just like that. And it's just so that it gets a nice smooth, not metal to metal. So now we're going to put this back together. Now we can put the rotor on. Okay, now we've put the rotor on. Before we adjust those e-brake shoes, I put the 2 lug nuts on, and I want to spin it. I want to see if I hear that shushing sound. And if I do, then I can take it apart, try to adjust the back plate, put it back together until I get no sound. So let's give it a turn. Hear that? I can hear it. There's one spot. It's small. It's really coming right from this area, which is about where it was before, right? We had a really high spot hitting the metal right there. So now all I have to do is take the lug nuts off again, and I can see if I can manipulate that plate. All right, let's see what we got. That's right there. Little silver spot right there. It's actually probably where it was flat. It was sharpened out like a razor. Well, look at that. Not a sound. Not a sound. So now I'm going to adjust these parking brakes, adjust the shoes inside, then I'll clean this rotor up, and we'll put it back together. So I'm going to put 2 lug nuts on so I can push this rotor right against that hub. So as I adjust it, it's just like the wheels on, so it's going to get a true adjustment. So right there, I'm going to adjust that. Remember, we're going to go in the down. And you'll know either way if you forget. We're adjusted the e-brakes, parking brake shoes. The noise is gone. I'm going to clean the rotor up. I'm going to put this little boot thing in there just to stop any stuff from getting in there. But let's clean the surface from all my hand grease. All right, so now we're going to clean these tins so that we can reinstall them. There's my screwdriver. Yeah, just look at all that dirt that got caught in there. Right here, look at that. Now it looks like someone cleaned it really good though, in the sense that there's no rust. Now we have to clean the tin, especially the top part. Should be easy because they're fairly new. Just really want to get all that grease off there. We'll really clean that in there. Perfect. I'll just clean the back, but I'll reapply it. Beautiful. Now let's get this. Now, let's apply a thin coat of caliper grease. Perfect. Take your tin, slide it back over. Let it snap right into place. Now see that? I looked real close and I saw that grease coming out. I don't want it there. Get rid of it. We want 0.0 chances of this recollecting any dirt. All right, let's flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Rule of thumb, I'm just always going to check. I like to put grease in the boot. It's kind of like when you pack bearings and you put the grease on the inside of that hub. I feel it does the same thing here. Let's do the same on this. So there we go. Now we're going to bolt that on, and we're going to put the pads back on. Take the caliper bracket, slide it where it goes. All right. So now I'm going to torque the caliper bracket to knuckle. All right, so now we're going to put the pads back on, and before I put them on, I am going to clean up. Remember, there was grease on this, and I'm not happy about that. So down here on the footings, I'm going to make sure I get any grease off. And that's what you want. You want your pad to fit just like that. That way it can release and go back to its spot. Let's clean the grease off the inner. Perfect. Let's get that caliper ready to get mounted up. Now I didn't compress it because it came right off very easily. So now we can remove our lug nuts, put our wheel back on. spins. This is how you tell if your parking brake shoes are adjusted correctly. Start at noontime, spin it, it should be one correct full rotation at least once. So here's the valve stem. There you go. Perfect. Let's torque the wheel. Hopefully this video helped you out. I know that I had fun doing it. I like solving problems. Hopefully you like watching that. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Don't forget to ring that bell because then it turns on all your notifications and you won't miss any of the future videos. Thanks for watching.